You are listening to the Cultural Providers Network podcast, a Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health production, building and sustaining a network of culturally and ethnically diverse voices to promote policies, practices, standards, and research that improve the mental health of children, their families, and communities.
This podcast is brought to you by the Minnesota Department of Health. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Cultural Providers Network podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Jones, and on today's episode, we have Brittany Clausen, who's going to be sharing all types of awesome information from an HR perspective, from a counseling perspective, from a business perspective, just from perspective. So we're going to get into a really cool conversation. Brittany, how are you?
I'm good, Brandon. I'm just so thankful to be here. I'm really grateful to be here. I really appreciate this opportunity. I love what MACMA is doing. So I'm just, when you asked me, I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. I'm gonna be here.
Absolutely. Well, we are definitely excited to have you here on today's podcast. Can you tell the folks a little bit about who you are? Give us a little background, what's your connection to mental health, all that good stuff.
Yes. Okay. Well, to start, I'll just say I am a mental health aficionado, just to start. And how that looks is I own Envision Greatness. We're a management consulting firm here in the Twin Cities. And I've integrated mental health into everything because one thing I know, and this is really just coming from my childhood. First of all, let me just peel that back. I'm a biracial woman, but I identify as Black. I grew up in Cottage Grove, which is a predominantly white suburb, and I have a white daddy and a Black mama. And I don't, you got to ask them how they got together. But when they got together, when they say opposites attract, that's really what happened. My dad is very analytical, very logical. My mom is very creative, very artistic. And when Brittany came out of the womb, I was in a conundrum because I'm really a mix between both logic and creativity. And so when I think about just my background growing up, having just, we didn't talk about mental health, but we didn't talk about it because we didn't understand it. And we didn't understand boundaries. We didn't understand, problems. And there's a lot of passive aggression in my family. So that really led to Brittany being small and just like working within her own means. And really the kind of the spark of how I kind of got into the mental health field was at 16, I had an abortion. I was pregnant and I had an abortion. And my first ever career counselor at the time, he was almost my guiding light. He did not shame me. He did not it was an Asian man, and he was just like, we're going to get you the help you need. We're going to make this happen. And it just so happened that my high school at the time invested in like a third party mental health practitioner. So shout out to Andrew Keel because he was a white man and he was like, Brittany, you are the victim. Let's help you figure this out. Because at the time, and my mom didn't know any better, but my mom was transferring a lot of the feelings that I had onto herself and then making it about her.
Yeah.
So through the evolution of therapy, getting that therapy, I was able to see how at the time, I think in high school, I wanted to be an architect. And it was one class that I took that was math. And I'm really good at math, but there was one thing in math, I was just like, I couldn't get it. I skipped a class that was vital for architecture. And anyway, I say that because I was like, oh, I'm moving on to the next thing. And granted, I could have went that route. I could have still went that route, but I'm one of those people. My mom kind of drilled this into me. What's your strategy? What's your vision? And so after I saw how many, therapists and counselors were there, they had my back, they poured into me. It made me see how I could help myself and advance myself in my confidence, but then also I could help my family. And I say that because I had a supervisor one time that said every social worker, and she was generalizing this, but I took some truth from it. Every social worker comes in with the idea that they could start with their family first. And I saw how divided my mom was from her family in Chicago. And so that just, I'm so family oriented, Brandon, that this made me see myself as almost a savior. Like, oh, I'm going to come in and help.
Yep.
So I say that because as I've grown and adapted in this mental health field, and tried to pour into other people, I've had to take a step back and check on myself and see how maybe I'm perpetuating harmful practices in the industry by trying to save people. And then after I trained myself, I integrated this into Envision Greatness. I trained myself how to be disciplined and utilizing other people's strengths. So when I talk about Envision Greatness and the philosophy behind the work that we do, yes, we are consulting. We do a lot around HR. We do a lot around training, coaching, leadership development. But I have really tried to pour into my mind what is the strength that they have and how do I utilize that to help themselves, so that way I can still use mental health as kind of that foundation, understanding certain terminology to kind of articulate and identify symptoms and characteristics that are limiting us, and then be able to just make it more plain for people to understand so that they can, whether they know it or not. If I'm really giving therapy, I can talk about it there in a healing space. But if it's general to my audience at Envision Greatness, I may talk about it differently, but they can still get that healing. They can still get that understanding. So that's a little more about me. And I'll just say I'm the middle child, but I'm really like big dog, big sis, because I really try to help my family understand why we need to heal. And it did take a long time to get here, but by me taking a step back, a step away from my family and just focusing on me, my family's starting to come along. So they're starting to understand how healing is so transformational. And it's not just church, it's also the work that we do. It's the faith you have to have, and then it's also the work you put in to really heal from your past. And that's what I'm doing in a way that I think people are getting it. They understand it. They do get frustrated now, because I know we do a lot of acting out, role playing, and people go, well, why am I doing that? The reason why we role play in the consulting space is so people can act out relevant situations that they've been through and see how they could do it differently. But from that, mental health is like self-discovery, self-reflection, awareness. And I'm doing it that way because I think we just need to, if I can't tell you explicitly that you need to heal, I'm going to show you how to do it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I have a lot of connections to you there, and my even with my own journey, especially entering into this field by working through my own stuff and working with my own family. And just like yourself, I had to disconnect from my family. And for me, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. But if it
Mhm.
started my sophomore going into my junior year of college, where I had to, I remember I'll never forget when I told my mom no for the first time. It was the scariest thing I've ever did. I remember I was shaking up my little razor phone. My mom called. She knew I got paid. I was only making like $600. I was working two jobs, making
Yeah.
like $600 every 2 weeks. She called for that money, and I was like, I can't do
Yeah.
it.
You were in high school when you told your mom no?
No, I was in college. I
Oh,
was
you
in
were in
college. I
college.
was a
Okay.
sophomore, junior in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say it took me to move out of my mom's house and be in my own place for like 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
Brandon,
Yeah.
before I could
Yeah.
say no.
Yeah.
Oh
That
my God. Because my mom, all she had to do is she has to just do this to
yeah.
tuck the lips, and it where's the switch? I
Yep.
mean, I'm telling you, that black mama, like
Yeah.
she's so profound, but also like there's so much in that,
Yep.
right? But I was
Exactly.
definitely fearful
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
wrong thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's I think that's a very common just experience that so many BIPOC, especially Black clinicians have, is like this distancing from our families and this coming back as we're on our healing journey that we don't talk about. It is a part of what happens. I think other professions may see this as well. But man, for me, like saying no to my mom was such a breath of fresh air for me because I was like, okay, I'm an adult. I can live. I don't owe her anything. I don't owe her these responsibilities. And if I don't stop doing this, I'm not gonna be able to fully grow into who I need to be. And I was
Mm.
in college. And when I think back at that, I was like, man, I was super broke. I was just trying to figure it all out, but I was still taking care of home, even though I was quote unquote removed from it in school.
Okay.
And then going into therapy and realizing, if I'm gonna have anybody quote unquote sit on the couch, I need to go sit on that couch myself. And that's when the real discovery happened. And that's when I
Yeah.
learned I had issues with assertiveness. I had
Mm.
issues around confidence. I had a lot of issues that I needed to work out. And then honestly, going through that experience and then getting married and becoming a father, that's when I realized that healing is a journey, it's not a destination, because
That's
all
right.
the stuff I thought I dealt with in therapy came right back up when I became a dad. And it was like, oh, why am I scared to hold my baby? Or why am I nervous? Or why am I responding to, my wife at the time in this way? Is because I still had stuff that I need to process, but I was in a different stage of life that I didn't know that this stuff was going to show up for me at that point. So yeah, so we could talk about that for a lot, but I think one thing I want to ask you, because this goes right into cultural considerations, is how do we
Yeah.
integrate cultural sensitivity and awareness into our practice, especially when we're working with BIPOC individuals? And you could talk about it from a consulting or counseling standpoint.
Sure. Sure. Well, one thing that I do, and this has kind of been my argument over the last couple of years around cultural competency and cultural humility. I walk into any space with the understanding that I don't know anything. I don't have to know anything. I have to know myself and I have to trust myself. But when I'm working with different folks, whether it be in consulting or counseling, it's with the idea again that they know themselves the best. And it's up to me to help them pull that out of them. So whatever it is that they're coming to me for the issue, whatever problem it may be, the way that I'm doing it is through the confidence within myself to say, here's what I know. What do you know? And when that happens, people take a deep breath of relief. Like you're not just about to just prescribe something that's already written in the book and then, tattoo it on their skin so that that's their prognosis. I shed light to certain terminology, like saying it sounds like this is what you may be experiencing. It sounds like, from what I heard, here's the connection I'm making. Is that valid for you? Do you understand that? And if they don't get that, then we sit in curiosity the entire time. I don't go in with an objective to say this is how it's going to be, because I might miss out on the true gems that lie there. And I've done that a few times, especially as a youth worker, when I was really just trying to copy paste, you need to get into housing, you need to get into housing. I would sit there and I would be like, oh, it sounds like this, let's do that. And I missed out on so much that they didn't trust me. They didn't trust me. They just said, oh, you're one of them. And when I hear one of them, it means you're aligned with a system that's against me. So I had to really take a step back, because I told you about that savior complex, and that savior complex is so strong because it's religious background, right? And then your family orientation, how they believe you should show up in the world doing good. But once I realized that the part of me doing good is about me being present, just being a support and trying to understand and listen, and then asking them, how do they want to move forward? Now that we've identified what could be the issue here, how would you like to move forward? And I give some examples of, like, here's what somebody could do if they were in this predicament or this situation. And I basically shed light on it to where it's not as heavy, meaning the diagnosis or the awareness of whatever issue is coming up for them. It's not so heavy to where um they're shaming themselves, because I do believe we get stuck in shame and embarrassment and guilt. And so my goal when I'm working with anybody, but specifically with the BIPOC community, is I come in just curious. I'm like, especially like, I'll just bring up mediation because I do a lot of HR work. And so I'm always asking people, what brings me here? Like, why did people ask me to come in here? And that's when they tell me, well, I think it's because this happened. Okay, tell me about it. And I just
Yep.
go along to the story until they've connected the dots. And once a person connects the dots for themselves, that's when healing really starts. Because I've learned through a couple therapists, because I've had therapy since I was 16, and I've
Hmm.
consistently seen a person. I'm 30 going on 31, so I've consistently saw somebody for 15-ish years. I'm not doing the math right, but it should be right.
Close
Well,
enough.
yeah, enough. And so when people just told me what they wanted me to know, like, you have this, this prognosis, this is what your issues are, and this is why. It's offended me. I've been offended because I couldn't see it. And I'm learning more and more about us, that we want to be able to see it for ourselves so we can believe it. And so that's why I go down this trail of curiosity with them instead of just judging them. And I use visuals too. I do a lot of drawing, writing, and I show what I'm doing. If I show them what I'm doing, then they can go, oh, I see where you got with that, but let me give you more context. So that's how I'm working with the community, is just explaining myself and being curious to what they have to show me.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and how you kind of tailor your approach to working in community, making sure that it's effective. I want to talk a little bit about providers and our role in addressing systematic issues, whether we're talking about racism or discrimination or even intergenerational trauma. What's
Mhm.
our role as providers to discuss these systems, work within these systems, help connect those dots, as you mentioned, for people to understand how to navigate these systems?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I have a great example of a way that I've explained this before. So I work with Black women in leadership, and there is the social do good of the work that they're doing, whether they're a nonprofit or government, depending on what their is and how they align. And so I have a real serious conversation up front with people who want to lead in this space, who want to do the work. And I invite them to this philosophy. One, when we're broken, when we're upset, when we're discouraged, we have two choices. One, to say, the system's broken. I don't need to do anything with it. I'm the one who's the victim, and I need to get ahead. Like, people need to give back. We're talking about either reparations, we're talking about just freely acknowledgement of their strength and who they are as a person, if you know what I mean. I really want to say some other words that I can't, that I'm thinking this is not appropriate on the podcast, but I say that because there's a lot of grief and frustration when you enter systems. Once you get past that honeymoon phase of the job, whatever it may be. And from there, there's this contention point to either choose to succumb to the system and the characteristics that align with that, which is oppression, and the scarcity mindset, comparison, judgment, frustration with your peers and your colleagues. But then the other side of that is, if you want to be a part of this work, if you want to be included in doing the work that needs to happen to dismantle oppressive systems, you need to rest. So the reason I say that, and it's so ridiculous, every time I say it, everybody's like, what? Why is that your first recommendation or advice to me, Brittany? And the reason why is because once you understand that you're a part of a larger system, it takes a lot of energy to get going on what you can do. And to your point and what we talked about earlier, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So you need a lot of creative energy, a lot of innovative ideas. You need collaboration. You've got to work with people who you may not agree with, who may not even see what you're trying to do. And so I say that because we can get burnt out real easily. And so in offering this idea that we should rest, because rest also helps our brains regenerate, rewire, and feel rested to be able to say, how would I do this differently? And that's how I've approached my work altogether. And this is why I say I'm an anomaly, because I've been able to do certain things that I believe, through my own confidence, I've found different ways to still reach people at whatever level they are. I kind of have dismantled the power dynamic in my head. I don't think just because you're a CEO or an ED that I can't talk to you. In fact, that's why consulting made a lot of sense for me, because I thought, well, somebody's got to respect the words that are coming out my mouth. So when I talk about our responsibility, the responsibility really boils down to the choice that we have, and saying, yes, we need to be part of transforming the system, creating new ways to heal. And to do that, I'm not going to give a one size fits all strategy because it's different for everyone. But overall, our innate responsibility is to do this work if you choose, because I do see that some people live in despair, like as an option, like, and maybe there's a lack of ignorance and that the fact that they don't know. But I also want to say we're extremely creative beings. So if that's the case, you need to strategize how you want to work through this system. And it's going to take more than you. So that's our, if I'm answering this question, that is the responsibility we have, is to make the choice. And after we've made the choice, we do the work. So if you would like
Yeah.
to be on that space where I just would rather complain, then go somewhere over here,
Yeah.
respectfully. I'm gonna come get you when it's time. But I
Yeah.
don't know if it's gonna be me or my grandkids, somebody.
Yeah.
But if you're on the choice, or I mean, on the path to make a change, then strategize it and get some
Absolutely.
people rally around you so that they can help support the vision that you have wherever you are.
Absolutely. That yeah, you definitely answered the question. You actually answered like
Okay.
two of my questions, which is amazing. You gave a nice strategy and tip around utilizing rest to restore your creativity and rejuvenate you and your passion to get through this. You know, these systems, not just a system, but these systems
Yep.
are hard to navigate, and people do just kind of check out and give up. Which actually leads to my next question, because a part of that giving up piece is sometimes people don't even get started. And we use things
Mhm.
like stigma as an excuse to why we don't
Yeah.
do it. Now, I do think that there is stigma. Don't get me wrong here, but I also have seen people utilize that as a reason to not seek out therapy or not seek out help, is because of this level of fear of engagement. And also just not having enough information. I think that a lot of times when we think about therapy or healing or just working on ourselves, we think we're sitting on the, well, not even sitting, we're laying, back down on the
Yep.
couch with a box of Kleenex, pouring our eyes out to some older gentleman who has a clipboard and their legs crossed with a sweater vest on. Like that's how we think about therapy, because that's how it has been presented to us through media.
Yep.
But it looks
Mhm.
very different in very different ways, and different types of
Absolutely.
people need different type of therapeutic interventions.
That's right.
What advice would you give to someone who is hesitant or resistant to seeking out some sort of therapeutic or just practical help through consulting, when they're faced with their various different mental or emotional health challenges?
Okay. So I think I think most people need to be educated on the process. Like I think when we go into spaces, we think we're going to get that healing that moment, and like that was a one and done situation. I think that that whole myth has to be just thrown away, because that isn't even healing. Like that is a recipe for disaster. I If you can't get to the root, which I unless it depends on what kind of conflict is showing up for you, why you need help. Because sometimes people are just ready to air it out. And I get that. That is amazing. But the transformation happens over time. So part of what needs to happen is just understanding that this, what we're talking about healing, is patience. Patience and understanding of yourself and the process. So that means when you get into therapy, know that there's going to be an assessment. And this assessment is just general questions to understand the context of who you are as a person in this day and time. And that may mean, depending on how long you talk about it, that we could go for 2 sessions, 2 hour sessions, just going over that. So let's just scrap that whole idea that I'm going to see a therapist today and we're going to get that information and we're going to heal today. And then on top of that, therapy is really, when we're talking about different therapists and their modalities, different approaches to therapy, this is also like almost dating, to a certain degree, because you have to learn them too and their style, and that style may not work for you. And I've learned that the biggest thing is that we have to trust this process, because even if I discover that I don't enjoy your approach, I know that I can still learn something from you that is enough to where I can say, okay, that triggered me. Why? Because I did get a weird diagnosis one time. Out of all my therapy, I got a weird diagnosis and it really threw me off, but I had to explore it because I said to myself, well, maybe there's still something here for me. How did this person arrive here? So let's just say that. Okay, But then when we get to the stigma, there is so many different flavors of therapy. And as a provider, one thing I learn to ask is to see, what do they enjoy? What activities do they enjoy? Like if I hear that they're really into music, if I hear that they've explored like yoga or something like that, I might introduce some somatic body therapy so that they can move through what I'm saying. I'm losing track with your question. I need you to ask it one more time because I
Yep.
wanted to
No,
get that.
no, you're doing good. I was just saying, what advice would you give to folks
Oh,
who are hesitant to seeking
oh,
out therapy?
okay. Well, the main thing is understand the process and then in be inquisitive about your own journey. So don't judge other people in trying to help you. Just learn, okay, that didn't really sit with me. Why? What is something that they said that made me go, I don't like that. Because sometimes what happens in our community and just across the board, when we're kind of in a day and age where we like to uh miss misuse certain therapeutic terms. And we like to
Absolutely.
do that in a way that it stops the conversation, it stops the healing. I just want you to know I'm anxious, I have anxiety. Well, there is something different with a diagnosis of anxiety versus having anxious thoughts or feelings. And I say that because once we name something, we like to stay there. I want to just be there. And true healing means I acknowledge my thoughts, I acknowledge my feelings, I acknowledge my past, I see my present, even in my anxiety, whatever the case may be, and I'm moving through it. And here's my way to move through it. So I say for folks who aren't hesitant or for who are hesitant to this, understand it's a journey. Understand that relief happens the moment that you say yes to this healing journey. And know that it you might have to let people go. You might have to let things go. And that's shedding dead weight so that you can be kind of cocooning into this beautiful butterfly and the next rendition or evolution of who you are. And it will happen over and over and over and over again. It's never just a one time that I healed. As soon as you heal from one thing, you will be moving on to that next thing. And you will be like, what? But
Yep.
don't be discouraged because that's what life is. That's what life is. So that's my
Absolutely.
answer to your question.
Thank you. I'm no, that was a beautiful answer. I always talk about embracing the journey. You
Yep.
know, one of the things that I used to hear all the time used to drive me crazy when I was practicing clinically is I would have parents, partners, social workers, or other types of workers saying, "Hey, can you fix this person?" I would even have individuals say, "Can you fix me?" And it's like, we are not in the business of fixing. We are
Yeah.
in the
No,
business of encouragement and shifting perspectives, and it's on
that's right.
you to figure out where you're at and develop that self-awareness or those boundaries or those
That's
choices
right.
or whatever you're looking for. I'm here to just help facilitate that and help point out some things that you may not see. But if you want to get fixed, you need to get a mechanic, and that's not what we are here to do. We don't fix things here
That's right.
in this work. So awesome. So I have two more questions for you before we close out. My next
Okay.
question is, how do you envision the future of mental health care evolving to be more inclusive, equitable, and accessible to communities of color?
Oh, this is really a good one. I'm gonna just say we're already on our way. The younger generations I'm speaking on, the younger generations are already becoming more privy to mental health and awareness of that. Whether or not they are articulating themselves to where they can heal from it, that we still have some more work to do there. Um, but I do see that we're raising our consciousness. I do see that we're getting to a place where we can start to have these conversations with mom and dad. Now, we might be screaming at mom and dad because we're so fed up and frustrated, and we haven't figured out how to what's that word when we're bringing ourselves down. I'm forgetting the word right now, but just being able to articulate ourselves in a way that it's not necessarily coming out like we're yelling. But I like that we're starting to say and feel these things, and because that lets me know that we're tired of that way. of treating each other a certain way, suppressing emotions, business as usual. Like that term is just not, business is personal. I mean, we're showing up as human beings in a workspace and not being, but they say to bring our authentic self. I'm like, well, this is my authentic self. It's broken. So hello. I say that because I see that we are transcending as a human race altogether. And I think at some point we'll get into a space where talking about doing the work, action oriented activities to heal will then be a part of our conversation. And because at some point, and I bless the people who knew me when I had real strong anxious attachment. Bless those people, because at some point all I was, you can call it boy crazy, but it was also like this feeling of wanting to feel wanted. And at the time, I bring this up because my friends were like, I'm just listening to you, but I'm so sick and tired of you telling me what your pain is. What are you doing about it? So I think as a human race, we'll get there where we're kind of like, I hear you. Where are you going with that? What do you want to do with that? Because even all my girlfriends, we talk about that. And we're starting to normalize these symptoms without judgment. Now, social media is its own gamut where people are judging each other, but in real life, I'm feeling comfortable to share with my friends that I've gone through this. I'm even comfortable as a professional to share my shortcomings or the lessons that I've learned. And I've been receiving positive feedback from people, even from strangers, when I share my story. It's normalizing, mishaps or lessons learned or issues that come up where mental health was abandoned at the time. But now that I'm aware and been able to heal from that, I can share that. So I think we're moving in a good direction. Timing wise, I'm not one of those psychics or predictors, but I just see our younger kids are starting to get there because we are seeing, suicide and more violence. And I think it's because people our kids, our youth don't know what to do with this pain that they feel. They don't even know how to articulate it. They don't know
Right.
what it is.
Absolutely. And I would just add on to what you're saying is a lot of times their pain is normalized, so they don't feel anything, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't have a vision for the future or goals. I hear so many young people when you ask them like, "What do you want to do after high school?" or "What do you want to do when you're an adult?" and they'll just say, "I don't know." And you just say that just because they don't want to talk to adults. Now I think that they're telling us the truth. They don't know because they're responding to so much trauma and stress that it's a moment by moment type of response. It's not even day by day for some young people. It's literally moment by moment, and that's a scary place to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I've dedicated a lot of the work that I do is like we have to, if for anyone, can we all align to help our babies and our children
That's
get
right.
a little bit more further. So
That's
all right,
right.
I've taken a lot of your time. You just dropped so many nuggets and wisdom, and there's all this stuff all over the place. Where can people find you? If someone wants to reach out to
Oh,
you or connect to you, where can we connect?
okay. Well, okay. I'm actually everywhere. I really am. Work that I'm doing is across the United States. It is but where can we find me? Okay, I am on Instagram. Envision Greatness is at Envision Greatness too, but it's if you want to talk to Mimi, if me is the person, I'm the Brittany Clausen. So just how you hear it, the THE, and then my first and last name. I'm on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn. I've been doing LinkedIn like really well lately.
I told you.
Yeah, I'm like, you can connect with me there. Um, and let's see, I will say Envision Greatness has their Facebook page, but no, you probably can't be my friend. It's a real, my friend set up my security, so that probably is no go, but Instagram for sure and LinkedIn. And then if you wanted to connect just to have a deeper conversation, my email is bclausen@envisiongreatness.org. I'm happy to get that. I also have the Envision Greatness podcast and our YouTube videos are up too. So that's Envision Greatness as well. So I'm everywhere. You can find me everywhere. You can actually, and I mean this humbly. I'm not kidding you, Brandon. You can actually just Google me because if you go on Google and type in my name, you will see a lot of
There you
stuff. I'm
go.
like the first Brittany Clausen to show up.
Gotta love that SEO. It's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brittany, we're gonna make sure we link all those things to everywhere that we're gonna share this podcast so people can find it easy. Definitely reach out, folks, if you want to get connected to Brittany. She's awesome. If you ever see her pop up close to you at a conference or at a school or at your job, go see her
That's right.
talk. She is going to give you some perspective that may be life saving or at least life changing. So,
That's right.
Brittany, thank you again for joining us today. I'm looking forward to having other conversations with you as well. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.